So at work, my team is ideating on building a new user interface that has tabs, and those tabs are based on user-provided content, which means that the width of the tabs and the number of tabs is going to be variable based on the logged in user. And as a thought experiment, I wanted to see if I could use CSS Flexbox in my Angular app to create a squishy tabbed UI that allows the tabs to grow and shrink as necessary. So instead of having more tabs here, let's just see what happens when we shrink the browser, and you can see that the tabs are clipping the text and allowing the tabs to shrink as needed to satisfy the UI. And this is just the power of Flexbox. It's made specifically for building these kinds of flexible interfaces, and the amount of CSS required to do this is like shockingly small. And here, just as a kind of create more fun here, I'm allowing the user to click to toggle this locked-in state where essentially the tab is not allowed to shrink, and you can see that those remain the same size and the other ones shrink to fit the space. And of course we can toggle these off, and then we can add other things: kittens, dogs, oh my. And you can see again things are shrinking to allow all of the tabs to fit into the UI. So let's take a quick look to see how this is happening under the hood. It's shockingly little code. So if we look at the HTML first, the tabs are just an unordered list, and we can see that we have this click here to lock the tab in place, and all that's going to be doing is setting this -- locked Batman style class. So we have our tabbed class and our tab -- lock class, and let's take a look at what those are actually doing in the CSS. So here's our less file for the app component, and I've broken this into two sections: one that just handles the Flexbox stuff, and then the rest, which is more the visual styling. But that's completely irrelevant for this particular exploration. So if we just look here, again, a shockingly little amount of CSS is required to build this, because this is exactly what display flex, or the Flexbox display, is built for. So the tabs are set to have display flex, and then all we're doing is setting the flex grow to 0, the flex shrink to 1, meaning that the browser is allowed to shrink that element, and then we're setting the overflow and the text overflow to ellipsis in order to create that clipping effect when the content is smaller, or the content is larger than the tab in which it's contained. And then when we lock something into place and we add that -- lock class, all we're doing is setting that flex shrink property back to 0, telling the browser that you're not allowed to shrink this particular container. So again, we can see here, if we look at the elements, let's get some of this stuff out of the way. All right, and let's look at one of these. Right, so you can see here's our tab class, and when I go to click on this, we're adding that tab -- locked, and if we look here, all that's doing is setting the flex shrink to 0, right? And if I toggle this off, you can see that the tab will now shrink back. If I toggle it back on, it'll not shrink. And there we go. I mean, pretty cool. Super little CSS required to create this type of effect, and I don't know, kind of a cool effect. So just a fun Friday little code kata.